Hi everybody, this is Dr. Nitin Choda with Ignition Time, and in this important update I'm going to tell you exactly where the negotiations stand right now. I'm going to give you the latest job report numbers for July that just came out, and they were actually better than expected, which means that the administration will have a little bit more leverage in their negotiations with Democrats. And then if you want to stick around towards the end, I'll give you some behind the scenes information about what's going on in the negotiations with Mark Meadows and Stephen Mnuchin on one side and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer on the other side. Chuck Schumer actually told Stephen Mnuchin, I'm expecting you to be a better influence on Mark Meadows and I don't want Mark Meadows to be a bad influence on you. I quote, this is what Chuck Schumer said to Stephen Mnuchin behind closed doors. So I'll give you some of that information behind the scenes as well. So let's jump right into where we stand right now. After 3 hours of talks last night, that is Thursday evening, the two sides basically didn't have much to agree on. They're still trillions of dollars apart. I'll give you the three big sticking points that they essentially are stuck over and that they can't agree on. But basically, Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, who has, by the way, struck deals with Democrats in the past, so he has experience with deal making with Democrats, and Mark Meadows actually is taking more of a firmer position from the administration side. This is based on reporting from Jake Sherman at Politico. But Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin said after the meeting, negotiators will decide today if they should continue to reach consensus. Now, these are important words. He didn't say we'll strike a deal today. He said we'll decide today if they continue to reach consensus. This means that we are nowhere close to a stimulus bill. We are nowhere close to a relief package. And he said, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows told reporters that the parties are still a considerable amount apart. That's what he said. Now, there are three major sticking points. Before I get to the sticking points, I just want to set expectations clearly for all my viewers and all my subscribers. First, a bill needs to be drafted. And before a bill needs to be drafted, there needs to be consensus from both sides. So, step one is consensus from both sides about what needs to be in the stimulus bill. Step two is the bill has to be drafted, which usually takes 2 to 3 days. Step three is the Senate and the House, I should say the House and the Senate have to vote for it, and then the President signs it, and then it becomes law. So at this moment in time, there is no consensus on the entire bill, let alone something being passed and becoming law. When there is a consensus, then it takes 2 to 3 days for the law to be created. Then it takes 2 to 3 days for the House and the Senate to vote on it, and then it reaches the President's desk and the President signs it. So even if by some miracle there was an agreement today, just like that, it's going to be approximately a week before it's signed into law. So that's where we stand right now. By the way, until that bill is signed into law, there will not be a second stimulus check. There will not be an unemployment benefit extension, continuation of the unemployment benefit extension. There'll be no aid to states. There'll be no aid for schools. There'll be no money for testing. And there'll be no extension of the Paycheck Protection Program. So all of these things are actually up in the air right now. Now, I know there are a lot of other channels out there, and I'm sure all the other YouTubers, all the other channels also do a good amount of work, a good amount of research, as I'm sure I hope they do. But please don't get caught in any hype that something was approved or something was already passed, because that is not the case yet. Where we stand right now is that there is no agreement, there is no consensus between the two sides, which, I mean, I'm thinking the same thing you're thinking. It's shocking. But once that happens, then the wheels start turning. So at this moment in time, at the time I'm recording this video, even though there is consensus that there should be a second stimulus check, the law hasn't been written, the bill hasn't been written, because they are stuck on three other key points. What are the three other key points? Number one, the overall price tag of the stimulus package. House Democrats passed a 3.4 trillion package in May. That was the HEROES Act. The administration has offered to spend approximately $1 trillion with the HEALS Act. And White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows has signaled that the White House could agree to more. So there's that. Number two, aid to states and cities. This is the big one. Democrats want to send $1 trillion to local governments to make up for budget shortfalls. They want to fund public health efforts and keep government workers employed. Trump calls that a bailout for states led by Democrats. The president calls that a bailout for states led by Democrats, and the administration has countered where some reports said it was $200 billion, and Democrats said the Republicans have, the administration has countered with $150 billion. And the third, which is the big one that all my viewers, all my subscribers are interested in, and which I personally want to, I'm looking at very closely as well for a while now, the federal unemployment boost, the enhanced unemployment benefit extension, which was $600 a week on top of state UI benefits with the CARES Act, which expired at the end of July. Now that the Democrats advocate extending the $600 payments all the way through January of 2021, several months into the future. Republicans proposed an extension at $400 up until December, but the Democrats have rejected that. Now, Lindsey Graham has proposed a 100% wage replacement. There was talk prior to that of a 70% wage replacement after an initial number that was thrown out of $200 a week. And then there was a proposal for a short-term extension for $600 for 1 week while things were being negotiated. All of that stuff was rejected by the Democrats. So that's where things stand right now. And basically, the Democrats are pushing for money for food stamps and childcare. The two sides are also arguing about schools and the postal service. And Republicans have sought to link some of the school money to schools opening, which Democrats oppose. So, and there's also some disagreement about pensions. Apparently, they're trying to negotiate a whole bunch of things at one time, and that's why it's taking so long. The president has indicated that he wants to focus on the unemployment benefits extension and the extension of evictions, and the Democrats want something a lot more comprehensive, a lot more well-rounded, with a higher price tag. So this is where things stand right now. Now let's talk about the job report numbers that came out. Now these numbers were better than expected. The July job numbers came out this morning, and non-farm payrolls increased by 1.763 million in July, and the unemployment rate fell to 10.2%. Both numbers were better than what Wall Street expected, because Wall Street had forecasted 1.48 million and 10.6%, and instead we got 1.763 million, and unemployment rate fell not to 10.6 but to 10.2%. So basically things were a little better than expected, and this is where things stand right now. Now, I had mentioned this in my video last night that if the July jobs numbers were worse than expected, then that would put more pressure on President Trump, more pressure on the Democrats, more pressure on the Senate to get a deal done. But now that these numbers are better than expected, it could potentially give the president a little bit more leverage to say, hey, we don't need the $600 a week federal booster. This is possible. I mean, it's not what we want, but this is possible because the data is what a lot of the administration officials and what the GOP is relying on. So, there are some wide variations around these estimates because of the resurgence of the pandemic. But these are the numbers that we have right now. And according to a senior U.S. economist at Capital Economics, Andrew Hunter, July's report confirms that the resurgence in the illness cases caused the economic recovery to slow, but also underlines that it has not yet gone into reverse. So I'll link you to the article, to the report below, where you can read about this. Now, I'm going to give you some behind-the-scenes information about what's going on. By the way, this is where things stand right now, as and when information is released, and I do expect some sort of a moment to happen today, because the president has essentially said he's going to take executive action, and I did talk about this in the previous video. We don't know what kind of executive action he can take because the power of the purse rests with Congress, but I am going to give you some behind the scenes information. Now, this is from Jake Sherman's Twitter feed, Jake Sherman at Politico, so all credit to him. But basically, Jake Sherman said about the president, this is what he said: instead of working the Capitol to break the logjam, Trump, in his bubble at his summer vacation home in Bedminster, which is where he is today, while the people he ran against, meaning lifelong politicians like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and a former Wall Street banker, this is Stephen Mnuchin, the US Treasury Secretary, flail at a compromise. Trump called the GOP negotiators several times Thursday evening, though. So this was from Jake Sherman at Politico. Now, this is Jake Sherman also talked about political calculations and legislative negotiations, when to give away, what to ask for, where to hold the meeting, etc. And so far there have been 10 meetings between Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer on one side, on the Democrat side, and Stephen Mnuchin and Mark Meadows on the other side, which is the administration side. So there have been 10 meetings over 2 weeks, have yielded little more than bickering and resentment. And after a 3-hour meeting last night, which I did cover late last night, if you've been following my channel, negotiators emerged to say that they had made little progress that they had made progress, on small items, but remained trillions of dollars apart on an overall package and still had no agreement on big items. This is the problem. They still had no agreement on big items like enhanced unemployment benefit extensions and funding for state and local governments. And so it looks like for now, there is no next stimulus package, which by the way means for now there is no second stimulus check. Everyone's talked about yes, second stimulus checks. When are we going to get them? I've also had questions about when the unemployment benefits are extended, which presumably they will be. Now, the path to getting there, we don't know yet. But I mean, it is a political necessity to get them extended, and it is an economic necessity to get them extended. Are they going to be retroactive? The answer to that question is we don't have word on that yet. This is too important, too significant for me to speculate on, and I'm not going to speculate on anything because I don't want to give my viewers, my subscribers, false hope. I want to report the truth so you can make decisions and plan accordingly and make intelligent decisions about what you want to do and how you want to get through the next few days and few weeks. So for now, there will not be another stimulus bill for now, because again, there is no consensus from both sides. Let me repeat. Number one, there needs to be consensus and a bill needs to be drafted. Number two, that needs to pass the House and the Senate. Number one, takes 2 to 3 days after a consensus is reached. Number two, takes 2 to 3 days for the House and the Senate to vote on it, and then the President signs it into law. So we're talking about a week before a bill is signed into law, after which the Treasury can start distributing the $1,200 checks, after which the states can now turn on their systems to start paying the federal booster. So this could, this is not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next week. By the time you see some money in your account, it could be several weeks from now, and that is assuming that a consensus is reached. So that's where we stand right now. So both sides will have to figure out how to position themselves amidst the rubble of what might be Jake Sherman's words, what might be Congress's biggest swing and miss in a decade. Blame will fly. In a situation where things go wrong, people want to point blame. Now, in a situation where things go right, people want to take the credit. So in this situation, blame is going to fly. There were already some interesting, somewhat nasty comments yesterday from both sides, and I think that the rhetoric is actually going to increase. I think the whole the tone is going to get a little worse today, unless there's some sort of a breakthrough moment. And even if the president takes some sort of unilateral action and issues an executive order, it remains to be seen how impactful that will be, because again, the power of the purse, the allocation of the funds, the stimulus money allocation comes from Congress, and then it's the Federal Reserve that essentially generates that money, and then it's the US Treasury Secretary that distributes the money. That is the way the system is set up. I'll link you to another video on my channel where you can learn about how the US government gets money and how the US government spends money. It's very important for you to understand the flow of money. It's not like the president can snap his fingers and send out stimulus checks. That is not the way things work as per the Constitution of the United States. Also, I've done another video on where the stimulus money is coming from. Where is this all taxpayer money or is this borrowed money? The answer is it's a combination of both. So you definitely want to check out that video. We're already in debt. We're over $25 trillion in debt, which was one of the reasons the Republicans wanted to take a wait and see approach, because they don't want to drive the country deeper and deeper into debt, which can then lead to inflation, which can then lead to a weakening of the dollar. Because we are in so much debt, all this money is not taxpayer money. It's money that we essentially generated out of thin air by essentially printing money digitally, and the Federal Reserve Chairman specifically said so. And I've done another video on this, where does the stimulus money come from. So blame is going to fly. Pelosi and Schumer are already maligning President Trump and the Republicans for, in their words, not recognizing the scope of the problem. We could see the difference in values that we bring to the table. That's what Pelosi said. Now, the GOP negotiators have pushed to sort of restrict the Democrats' aggressive demands, shrink the programs that they were seeking to put in place, and generally minimize the need for government intervention, which is, the Republican position. And as far as Jake Sherman is concerned, he said, in his words, there was a middle ground, and therein lies the Democrats' own gamble. They held hostage the main components of the bill in order to try and score a big package. They only offered modest concessions. In this case, the White House's typical hyperbole, these are Jake Sherman's words, the Democrats don't want to cooperate, will be largely true, and they don't, and they even admit it. So Democrats firmly believe they need a global deal and thought they could hold out, and rank and file Republicans would revolt over the expiration of enhanced unemployment benefits. Maybe they still will, but it was a risky bet. Oh Lord. There was a really easy package here that was a bit too much for Republicans and far too little for Democrats, but it could have easily passed. Paycheck protection program, direct payments, meaning the economic impact payments, meaning the second stimulus check, extension of enhanced unemployment benefits, which is the key actually for the recovery of the economy, $105 billion in education funding, extension of eviction moratorium, testing, $200 billion for state and local governments, $10 billion for the United States Postal Service. So all of this could have and should have been achieved. At this point in time, it does not look like that is going to be achieved. Instead, and again, these are Jake Sherman's words, instead the White House is finalizing executive orders to try to halt evictions and student loan payments, suspend the payroll tax, and extend enhanced unemployment benefits. The signing of these executive orders could come as soon as this evening. Democrats will point to the $3 trillion bill they passed in the House in May as evidence that they were ready for the kind of legislation that this moment requires. The job report, which was better than expected, hopefully it'll cause both sides to break through the logjam, but it looks like that's not going to happen. In fact, it's not even clear if the negotiators will meet on Capitol Hill today. And keep in mind, there's an election coming up in 88 days. And there's going to be another government funding fight in right around 54 days. And the politics here are important. Stephen Mnuchin has done deals with the Democrats, like I pointed earlier, and Trump has signed those deals, but he has also essentially unnerved Republicans because they feel that he's quick to give up on the Democrats. Meadows, on the other hand, takes much more of a hardball position, and he represents the rank and file Republicans, and what he's doing is trying to be a sort of an opposing force to Mnuchin, in the sense they don't want to give in to the Democrats. It's fair to say that Trump has competing interests here, according to Jake Sherman at Politico. If he were in a room with Schumer and Pelosi, we have no doubt he would cut a massive deal with them. Isn't that interesting? In fact, I have reporting from Jake Sherman where Chuck Schumer told Stephen Mnuchin, why is it that Meadows is being a negative influence on you? You should be a positive influence on him. So that's just something to think about. And Jake Sherman says a president is unusually afraid of losing his base, a fear partially stoked by individuals like Meadows over the past 4 years. And finally, Jake Sherman says this is the moment President Trump promised voters. This is the moment that he said he was made for. Two parties deadlocked over a critical piece of legislation with the fate of the economy, the electoral prospects of his party, and the health of the nation hanging in the balance. Over 30 million individuals. Where is the deal maker in chief? And I talked about this earlier. Instead of working the Capitol to break the logjam, Trump is in his bubble at his summer vacation home in Bedminster, while the people he ran against, lifelong politicians and former Wall Street bankers, flail at a compromise. This is Jake Sherman's Twitter feed. You guys can actually, I will link you to it below so you can read that and and sort of decide what you feel about this. So again, it's been 10 days, no compromise on specific issues, no moving forward. Meadows says the president. Meadows did say that the president instructed them to reach a narrow deal with if a comprehensive agreement was out of reach. And as of right now, there is no meeting scheduled between the lead negotiators, and that's where we stand right now. Now, here's what we do know. This is something that just came in. Pelosi and Schumer have asked, this is just came in. Pelosi and Schumer have asked for another meeting with Meadows and Mnuchin today. And the buzz in the White House, there is some buzz in the White House about Trump signing executive orders today. And this is what Pelosi and Schumer said. We remain committed to continue negotiating and reach a fair agreement with the administration, but we will not go along with the meager legislative proposals that fail to address the gravity of the health and economic situation our country faces. We call upon the White House's negotiators to join us once again at the negotiating table today to secure a bipartisan agreement to put children, families and workers first. That's it, everybody. That's where things stand right now. These are the latest updates in the negotiations. I'm hopeful that I can have some positive news to report to you soon, but this is not going to just sort itself out. This is going to essentially get drawn out, and I wouldn't be surprised if things still fall into place, if things still snap into place. But this is where the state of the negotiations on unemployment benefit extensions and the second stimulus check and state and local government aid and the paycheck protection program and further aid for for hospitals. This is where the state of all those negotiations stand right now. This is the most consequential piece of legislation that the country has seen in many decades. I would say probably as significant as the legislations that were passed in the United States since World War II, and I will be the one to bring you the news as it happens. If you learned something new, and I know the news isn't positive, but if you learned something new and if you appreciate my reporting and all the research that goes into this, please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications below. I really appreciate you watching. We release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week, unless there's news and alerts like this. Thank you so much. I will link you to all the references in the description section below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.